Hello everyone, this is recording number 6 for a series on how to write a paper for a class in philosophy. In the last recording, we turned to the need to introduce technical terms, and now I want to talk just a bit more about philosophical writing. You probably heard about any number of values or virtues that philosophical writing can have or should have: clarity, precision. One should be creative, innovative, insightful, and so on and so forth. And you may wonder how to navigate these different values. Now, philosophers take quite different views on what makes for good philosophical writing. And in fact, these views are shaped by their own philosophical outlooks. And I will put my cards on the table and say that my own views are shaped by how Plato presents Socrates, at least for the purposes of seminar papers. Now, as Plato presents Socrates, Socrates takes it that philosophical questions are big questions. And by that, he means that philosophical questions are about large-scale issues such as what is the universe? What is good and bad? How should we conceive of the human mind or soul? And so on and so forth. And he takes it that these questions are complex and that any answer that one may have on such a question is plausibly a work in progress. Now, that kind of outlook, I think, informs philosophical writing, or it can inform philosophical writing. And I want to put forward 3 recommendations for you that in one way or another reflect this Socratic conception of philosophy. The first recommendation is use short sentences. Now, why would that relate to Socrates? Socrates tends to get somehow not just impatient, but puzzled and lost when someone goes on and on and on. And then he articulates a predilection for brevity that is about understanding. He says that when someone just talks at length, he gets lost. He no longer knows what the other person is saying. And I think that something of that sort also applies to paper writing. When you write short sentences, you help your reader understand what you want to say. So what does that mean? Once you have a draft, just look at every sentence and ask yourself whether it is unnecessarily long in such a way that it makes it harder for your reader to understand what you're saying than it needs to be. Second recommendation: pay close attention to words such as therefore, hence, because. These kinds of connectives are kind of flags for your reader. They indicate what follows from what in your line of thought. And hence, they play an important role in helping your reader understand what you want to say. Third recommendation: don't ascribe mental states to the philosophers whose work you discuss. For example, don't say Plato believes or Elizabeth Anscombe thinks. Rather, use the language of philosophizing or theorizing. Talk about premises, hypotheses, inferences, and so on and so forth. So that means that you say things like, Plato examines what follows if one accepts such and such hypotheses. Plato argues such and such. Elizabeth Anscombe lays out such and such a proposal. If you follow those recommendations, you enable your reader to see that you lay out an argument just as they do in the work that you respond to. And that is a way of entering a philosophical conversation. And that is, as it were, the Socratic spirit that I recommend.